in the pursuit of truth and common sense in an unbelievable world. You're listening to the Right Mind podcast with your host, Todd Showalter.
Hello, everybody. I'm Todd Showalter, and welcome to Right Mind. Today, my guest is Joel Carroll. He has a very powerful story to tell. He's a recovering drug and alcohol addict, and he's also a former gang member. And he's got a new book out. It's called The Book of Joel, and it's all about how he overcame this, among other things. Hello, Joel. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Todd. Grateful to be here.
You got. I've been going through your materials. Your background. I mean, you were a drug addict. You had alcohol abuse. You were part of a gang. You were doing. You mentioned dope. You were with prostitutes. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But the thing that I found, quite intriguing was you're also a family man. You're married and you have 3 nice young children. Tell me about this. What happened? And before getting into how you overcame it, just get us into how this whole story began.
So my father was military. I was born in 1978 in Mesa, Arizona. My father, my older sister, and I, we would travel a lot. There was a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression every time we moved to a different state out of nowhere. We moved to Europe, moved back to the States, and about the age of 10, I learned that I had rage. There was no abuse at home. There was no violence at home. My parents were alcoholics, but it was a really good home.
Okay.
When I was in elementary school, I got picked on a little bit. My buddies wanted me to fight this kid that I didn't want to fight, and I was terrified, but they pushed me into the ring after school, and I got in a fight with this kid, and I blacked out, and I almost beat him to death with a painted rock on a golf course, and I don't remember a thing about that.
Okay. Now you said you experienced, did you say rage? Is that what did you say? Rage.
Yes.
Okay. And this is something that came on. Do you think it was the result of the anxiety, maybe separation that you were having from the moving around that was causing it, or you don't know?
I still don't know.
Okay.
33 years later, when I get irritated to a point where it baffles me, then I still snap. I mean, it's a 33-year-old battle with just intermittent explosive disorder is what they call it now.
Okay. Now, are you? You've gone to therapy. Are you in? I assume you're in therapy. What was some of the? Did you have doctors that diagnosed this?
Yes, years later, when I was taken to psych hospitals in the Southwest, which was about 2010, 11, and 12, they started to diagnose me once the drugs were out of my system with intermittent explosive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, depression, PTSD from being kidnapped, death, the things that I saw and I endured, in my 19-year war with addiction.
Okay. Now that you mentioned also, you mentioned the kidnapping. That's another thing. Apparently you were kidnapped in Virginia. Was this the result of dealing with drugs and alcohol, or how did that all come about?
It was a crack cocaine addiction, and a lot of things added up to me becoming an addict to crack cocaine. Depression again, girlfriend. I couldn't keep a girlfriend. I've had a lot of beautiful young women in my life, and I was just unable to man up and be a good, reliable, honest boyfriend. And that lasted forever. But when I lost one certain girlfriend, and she ended up dating one of the guys that testified against me over a jewelry store heist outside of Washington, D.C., and she went with that guy, I lost it. I completely lost it. I wanted to murder these people that left me incarcerated. And instead of doing that, I picked up crack cocaine, and then I started sleeping with an older woman, about 20 years older than me. And she was about an hour and a half late with her money with these drug dealers out in the woods. And they beat me and threw me in the back of a truck. And about 100 yards away, 100 feet away from where they were going to kill me, the driver's phone rang, and it ended up being my lady friend with their money. So a lot of situations like that in my life that
all right. Well, yeah. I mean, that's unbelievable. So now you said you were incarcerated. How long were you in jail for?
I was less than a year. That was my first charge. And then I did a faith-based all men's learning program, which was 6 months And because it was a nonviolent offense, if I was to graduate that without any restrictions or any violent acts, then I was going to be transferred to a trustee work in the kitchen. And because I did all that very, very well, they released me and put me on probation for years. But, I was caught off guard by being testified against.
Okay, now you also, like I mentioned, you got married, okay, and you have 3 children. Did that all come about during the times of your abuse, or was this afterwards?
So I have 3 children in my addiction. My daughter's 22 years old. My oldest son is 12, and then I have a 9-year-old. All 3 were in my addiction. Then I had 2 sons after I got clean and sober 8 years ago.
Okay, and are you married to the same woman, or are you remarried?
No, I am. I'm
You are.
still
So
with
your
her.
wife
She
stood
stuck
through
around.
you. Your wife stood through you during all these hard times. I mean, it takes a special person to do that. How did she manage to do that?
She's a God-fearing woman from Covington, Louisiana, and she saw something in me in 2002 and something I never saw in myself. And she never knew me to be sober. For 11 years, I lied to her. I cheated on her, and she stuck around. She had faith. And once I went to the Salvation Army program in 2013, all men's program, 6 months, it was my 3rd time there. She saw the change in me that she'd been waiting for 11 years.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty profound. Now, also, was it during this time? I also noticed that you're a former chef at the Ritz Carlton, which is, I mean, we're not talking about Waffle House or Denny's here. At the Ritz Carlton, you were a chef, but you lost that to a DUI. Now, was this? I mean, was that during the same period, or is this coming after something? I mean, or was that all? Was all this stuff happening at the same time?
This is 19 years laid out in different states, different females, different situations where I just didn't know how to speak about anything that ever happened in my life. And the ego and the pride wouldn't allow me to ask for help. So in 2011, after putting the crack cocaine down, we moved to Tucson, Arizona, left Shreveport, Louisiana after the hurricanes of 2005. And I was cleaning and building swimming pools, and they're like, "Dude, you can cook. Like, let's do something here." So I went to the Art Institute of Tucson,
Uh-huh.
went in there, and I kicked ass, man. And after I had a stroke, I've already had a stroke at that point, and
Right. Now, was a stroke the result of the alcoholism, or I mean, how was that? I assume it was related to the abuse.
it was related to it, but it ended up being blunt force trauma to the skull, and they broke my skull. And
Oh,
after
okay,
I got kicked out of the military in 1998 in Virginia for using, and I
okay.
just didn't want to put that dope or alcohol down. So we fast forward all the way to 2011, and then it takes me a little while to get a grasp on things, but once I get it, nobody could stop me but me. And I ended up getting the opportunity to be a chef at the Ritz Carlton in Marana, just north of Tucson in the mountains, and it was one of the most serene things I've ever been through in my life.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. Again, I mean, that's a we're talking a pretty prestigious place, the Ritz Carlton, but subsequently that didn't work out, did it?
It didn't, and it was because I picked up one drink.
Okay. All right. Now, typically, I mean, so you've got all this going on. I mean, it's really, I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, so you got drugs, you got alcohol, you got gangs, you were kidnapped, DUIs, you were in prison. You even mentioned that you were in a psych ward for a while. I mean, when you finally, was there something, did you hit a point, or did you hit like a certain level? You hit a low where you just thought, I can't go any lower than this. What was it that finally said, when you realize, hey, this is it, I got to stop, or I'm either going to die or something's going to happen? Did you have a point like that?
So I got incarcerated on methamphetamine, which was the most evil substance or lifestyle. I'll say lifestyle because that's what this all is different lifestyles. When I was addicted to methamphetamine out here in the desert, it really took its toll on me spiritually, and it took me to a very dark place. And I ended up physically threatening somebody that loves me dearly with a machete. and I almost killed that individual. And they put me in a psych hospital again, and then they sent me to Pima County Jail, where they put me in a psych pod. And I was in there for a while. At this point, I was about 107 pounds as a 34-year-old man.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
gained about 6 pounds. So I was 113 pounds and 114 pounds. And in order to get double trays, which means double meals, I was going to need to be 5'4", 113, but I was 5'4", 114. And I was starving in there. I starved myself on purpose for 19 years using dope.
And why'd you
But
do
when I
that? For the money, or just because
just
of
for
your?
the alcohol. When I drink alcohol, I don't eat. I could be at a fish fry, I could be at a barbecue, but I won't eat. I'll just keep on drinking or keep on using.
Hmm.
That's just the kind of the kind of mindset I've had, and um, I didn't like starving. I didn't have a choice at this point,
Hmm.
and I was going to commit suicide. So they had me on 5 minute watch, where the COs would walk around every 5 minutes because I was homicidal with suicidal tendencies, and I attempted to die suicide by cop with a machete a little earlier than that, and just so much pain, so much resentment, and at that point,
You say resentment. Was it resentment towards yourself, your situation, or towards someone else? I mean, what? That's an interesting way of putting it. What were you resentful about?
everything that I couldn't wrap my mind around, which was life itself up to that point for 34 years. I ended up doing my step work, and I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of resentments since I was a child. My best friend died when I was 7, and that was the afternoon after I had spirits come at me in Belgium. It was a very dark time in my life as a child, and I ended up resenting everything.
Okay. Okay. Well, now going back to what I was mentioning earlier, I mean, you get to, was there a point, because you've heard it, I mean, it's out to people say it all the time, or you've heard about it, people can try to change you, but until you're committed to really wanting to change yourself, it's not going to happen. So, I mean, did you hit a certain point where you said, hey, this is enough. I can't go any lower than this? I mean, what was the catalyst? What was it that finally, pushed you forward and made you take that first step that you had to change your life? Or what was it? Can you remember?
Starving in that cell, being locked up in jail, and I couldn't get to food. I
Okay.
couldn't get to any food. Like out there, if I wanted to eat, I had the means to eat. Even if you're homeless like I was, I could go to a church at 107 pounds and get a box of food. When I was
Hmm.
incarcerated and I wasn't light enough for them, it really took its toll on me. I said, you know what, I'm starving in here. I'm having tremors, about to have a seizure, and then they released me. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try this thing again. And then it was another suicide thought of jumping in front of a truck in front of the psych hospital, and it was about a 2 hour pace back and forth on the sidewalk. And I ended up not jumping in front of a moving vehicle.
And
And I
what
went in there and
stopped you?
I,
Do you remember what stopped you?
God,
God. Okay. Go into that a little bit, because you mentioned, well, you give, you pretty much, you say God saved you. I mean, what was the moment you realized that?
so throughout my entire life, I was able to sense things, feel things, and see things that other people weren't feeling, seeing at that same moment. A sixth sense since I was a child, and I had it all the way through every situation that I went through in my life. I felt it, I knew it, I knew what was happening, and I was crying out for help, but my ego and pride wouldn't allow me to do so. So when I was in front of that hospital and the car stopped, I just looked up, saw people in their cars, saw kids in their cars, and thought about my daughter, who was all the way back in Virginia, who I'd abandoned, her and her mom. I
Hmm.
thought about her all the time, and I hated myself not for being around. And then now she has two brothers that are here in Tucson that I also abandoned. And I just
Right.
felt like nobody understood what the heck I was going through, and that I was the only person on the planet going through these things. And God just, after everything I'd been through, the kidnapping, the stroke, the death, the near death experiences, different cities, different people telling me that I was a special person, I took a deep breath. I took my hoodie off and I walked in that psych hospital and said, you know what, Joel, we're going to do this damn thing. All those doubters out there, including myself, I'm going to I'm going to prove to myself and everybody else that I'm going to change this.
Okay, and you bring, and that's wonderful. And so you knew you had people out there that you had to live for, your daughters, obviously a wonderful wife too. When was there a certain point though also that you to yourself said, hey, I owe this to myself to get better too? I mean, did you get to that point that, it wasn't just for everybody else, which is huge. You have to do that. I mean, but you also do have to do it for yourself, don't you?
I do, and I still do. They say being in recovery, you have to run a selfish program. But once I learned in this last 8 years that working on myself, there's a long line of people behind me that are counting on me to be reliable and honest.
Mm-hmm.
So when my father, that worked at the Pentagon all those years, he kept trying to pick me up from jails in different states, and my mom, and he took me to a rehab, and there's females walking around in this rehab, and I said, nah, Pops, please take me back to the Salvation Army. I need structure, all men, no cell phones, no females. And that's when I knew for myself, like, to thine own self be true. I know what I need to be a better man.
Mm-hmm.
So we drove back down to the Salvation Army. And at that point, it was like, you know what? I'm going all in on life. I'm going all in on God, and I'm about to get out of my own damn way.
Okay, so you basically, you were committed at that point. You knew that, and when I say committed, you were committed to actually getting sober and getting clean. You had a lot of other things too, though, wasn't? I mean, you had, were you able to get away from all this gang activity and everything associated with it? I mean, were you able to put all of that behind you?
Never put it behind me per se, but physically I walked away because spiritually I was getting more fit. So they're all the way on the East Coast. I'm in the Southwest. And
so
I
there was
thought,
a geographical difference,
yes,
obviously.
yes. But
So
there's so many resentments moving around, and I was so upset with people that did those things to me that I felt I'd get better if I moved away.
Was there a certain point during this journey that you've been through that you knew, all right, well, things are going to be okay now? Or did you have doubts in the back of your head? Well, it's going well now, but something, could still go amiss. Did you know, was there a certain point that you felt at least more confident than you did in the past that, yeah, things were going to get better?
When they released me from the psych hospital, February 8th, 2013, I made it back to my mom and dad's house after running away basically 20 years prior. And I knew at that moment at 2 o'clock in the morning, looking at the stars, that I had retired from the lifestyle as a whole. And I was all about being a man now. And I knew it. I felt it in my spirit. It was over. I tapped out, I hung the gloves up, and there was no more fighting for.
So you felt at peace. I mean, was that what it is? I mean, you were able to let that go. Now, once you did, I mean, that's just the first step, but I would assume. I mean, so after you let everything go, what were your steps forward? I mean, obviously, I mean, I assume you had, broken relationships, you had broken promises to yourself, you had a lot of stuff. I mean, you had a lot of stuff you had to wade through just to get back to the starting line. What was your process, to deal with that? Now that you knew you were going to be okay, you were going to move in a positive direction. Did you have a plan, or did you just, leave it up to God, or how did you go about doing it?
When I went back to the Salvation Army that last time, March 1st, 2013, I went in there, got on my knees, got out of my own way, got a sponsor, and I did a lot of soul searching with my sponsor, which is called the 12 steps. It's just soul searching with a guy.
And that's AA you're talking about, right? Alcoholics.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you joined that program, and you have a sponsor, and you went through the 12 steps. And it was that, following those 12 steps and with the help of your sponsor and God, I mean, was that what kept you, sober at that point, or was there more to it?
Absolutely. No, the change of environment, being in a place for 182 days with all men, structure, God, church twice a week, and AA. Yes, those things right there were everything.
So AA and God changed your life. And so what'd you do? Did you just say, hey, I can't handle this anymore, I got to give it to a higher power, give it to somebody else and let them take care of it? I mean, was that pretty much what you did?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now you and I assume you're still in AA. You still follow those 12 steps, and okay. And that's helped you, I assume, not just with alcohol and drugs, but probably other things too, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Every facet of my life, from the depression, anxiety, PTSD. Like, I'm still paranoid 8 years later from being kidnapped. I've got 4 young boys that live here with me and my wife. I want to make sure they're safe, but I'm able to talk about these things today. So it really helps me out by bringing it to the table immediately if I'm uncomfortable.
Okay, well now let's get to a point where you say, "Hey, I'm going to become an author," which you did, and like I said, you have a new book out called The Book of Joel, Cunning, Baffling, and Powerful. I believe that's from AA, isn't it?
It is.
Okay,
Yes.
and so you write. What inspired you to write the book? I mean, what what was it? I mean, was it your sponsor, or did you just think, I got to write this down? What was it?
I had so much to say. And for the last 8 years, I've traveled this city and I share my testimony. And I became a chairman of an AA meeting because I'm able to speak profoundly to individuals that feel like other people don't understand what they've gone through. So I'm a leader. I'm a leader. And when I got into the behavioral health field 6 years ago, I had to get a fingerprint clearance card because I'm a felon. And once I had all my charges on our dinner table from Virginia all the way through 3,000 miles away to the West Coast or the Southwest, I started typing these things: the stolen car, the jewelry store heist, the domestic violence, DUIs, high speed chases. I'm like, crap, man, like, you're writing these things down pretty well. And that's the moment that I did that. And it took me 6 years to get it published.
Okay, so you wrote it. So is this a your journey, a spiritual journey? That so is it an Is obviously autobiographical? Can't say an
Yes.
autobiography, but I mean, does it go further than that? I mean, do you go into the steps you took to get to your recovery, or work on your recovery? Because you're never fully recovered, I understand. I mean, but
Right.
do you go through that process in your book?
I do. So my experience, strength, and hope. That's what this story is. It's about my life. Born on Friday the 13th on a weekend of a full moon, all the way until now. And the first 17 chapters is just chaos, sadness, tragedy. And then the last 4 chapters are a step by step manifest of how I was able to get to where I am today. The steps that I took while still struggling with myself, but still moving forward.
Sure, sure. Okay. And does it ever get easier for you? I mean, as far as, now that you're on the road, so to speak, are some days easier than others, or has it
Absolutely.
become, okay. All right. I
I'm just
mean,
stronger today than before.
you're stronger each day. Well, that's good. That's the way to go in a productive manner. I mean, do you ever have days that you don't feel as good, that you feel like, well, I'm falling back a little bit? Do you ever have those?
I'll isolate for a day or two in my room and close the door because I work with people that ask for my attention for 12, 16 hours a day for 4 or 5 days a week. And it's called compassion fatigue. And I'm the guy that walks into these facilities, psych hospitals or rehabs or detox, and it's like, Joel's here. He's the one that understands. So it's so much that I
It
need to
gets to be
shut down.
exhausting, I'd imagine. Yeah, it wears you out, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now you are okay. So you're in the behavioral sciences, you say. So what? Tell us about that. So are you a therapist, or when did that all start?
2015, I was working at a gas station at a car wash when I got out of rehab. So for 2 years, I was there, became a manager, but I was also a co-chairman of this AA meeting. And people are like, "Man, you got to get in behavioral health field as an advocate." It's called RSS, Recovery Support Specialist. They're
Okay.
hiring felons, people that were addicts, that were incarcerated, homeless, deal with mental illness, but they're willing to share it today and not hold it in. I went in there, they hired me on the spot. It was a place where I was a patient at a psych hospital. And I haven't stopped since. I've helped open 2 rehabs, and that's where I'm at currently at right now. I'm at a drug and alcohol rehab for adults. And it's the most amazing thing for anybody like myself that continuously deals with our past, but it's willing to share even in the moment. One of my sons was diagnosed with cancer. Instead of hiding it or running away and getting high and getting a prostitute, I went in there and I shared it with the clients in there to get it off my own personal chest so I could get, kind of release that. And people are like, okay, he gets it. Because there's people in there that haven't talked about their child dying from cancer.
Sure. And that's a whole nother story. I mean, but you think that by not keeping it inside and sharing that and getting those things out, do you think that's one of the keys to not only your recovery, but other people that are suffering?
Absolutely. Just
Okay.
being
So
authentic and being vulnerable is a big deal.
being vulnerable, what do you mean by that?
So a lot of our lifestyles, being incarcerated, being a convicted felon, being a gang member, just being growing up a certain way and not wanting to talk to as a male, not wanting to talk to another man about my depression, my anxiety, being heartbroken over losing a girlfriend. To be able to do that and having somebody say, it's okay to do that, brother. It's okay to get vulnerable because we're gonna have to release some things in order to move on. And to have somebody do that for me back in 2011, 12, and 13 when I was in and out of psych hospitals, it took me off guard. Like,
Hmm.
man, this dude ran prison yards for 20 years and he's sitting here telling me all about his life and he's okay with it today.
So you think, okay, and that makes sense too, because I always talk about, especially males, they keep everything contained for their ego. Men aren't supposed to cry, men are supposed to be tough, and you think that just by getting those feelings out, that's a big step. What is when people now that you're treating people and you're working with people that suffer from the same type of situations that you were in, what are your steps? I mean, when somebody approaches you and you see that you've actually walked their walk, what's your process with them? I mean, do you take baby steps or you just jump right in?
I made them where they're at individually. My spirit senses, don't confront that person. Even if my boss says, hey, go talk to that person. If I feel that person is irritated and I feel that spirit, I'm going to give it a while. As a whole, as a group, as a community, I hit them in the morning after breakfast during their smoke break, and I'll go out there and I'll hit them with some knowledge to start the day. And for the people that don't know me and judge me without knowing me, once I'm done with that 20, 30-minute lesson on life for 30 minutes to start their day, they're like, wow, this dude gets it. The way he speaks, he's not holding back. He's very powerful. And then people, I encourage them to pull me aside, even when they don't want to. Pull me aside later. Let's go talk. I want to meet you where you're at and see what we need to do for you as an individual moving forward. Because in recovery, the greatest thing is we get our emotions back.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing about recovery is we get our emotions back, and it's tough.
Worst
It's
and
brutal.
the best, yeah. Well, you've actually been in the trenches, so you've got a lot of credibility when you're talking to somebody else. We got a couple of minutes left. As far as the book goes, when somebody gets a hold of your book, what are your hopes? I mean, do you? What do you, if somebody were to pick up your book and they were going through the same thing? I mean, are you hoping that they follow that book and follow your story and follow the steps that you took? Do you think that they can come out like you did?
Absolutely, it's already happened. When we feel like we're all alone and nobody could possibly understand what we've been through, and then to have somebody write down their pain while being ashamed while writing it, but overcoming it and still moving forward every single day while having doubt, while
Mhm.
having anxiety, while having panic attacks, while having kids that have operations. A mother that was almost dying last year from an open heart surgery, but not picking up a drink, not closing the door for weeks at a time, and not brushing our teeth or taking showers.
Sure,
To pick
sure.
up this book, you didn't need to be an addict or a criminal. You could be a loved one. You could be a loved one that has a son or a father that's incarcerated or been an addict, and just to see the hope and that we're not alone. It's
Mhm.
huge. It's huge.
Yeah, it certainly is huge. And like you said, I think a lot of people keep it under wraps just for their own pride. Where can people get a hold of this book? Is it available on Amazon or is it available to you directly?
Yeah, so it's available on Amazon,
Okay.
Barnes and Noble. If you Google Joel Carroll, JoelCarroll, and the Book of Joel, Cunning, Baffling and Powerful, you can buy it anywhere.
Okay. Okay. And we'll put all that up on the screen and we'll put it in the descriptions with links so people can get a hold of it. You had a very powerful story. And, like I said, you've been in the trenches. So you're not just somebody out there studying this stuff, saying, well, this is what I think it is. You've actually been there and done it. And fought the war. So, congratulations to you on that. And I wish you all the best, every step forward, and to your wife too. I mean, that's a very, you're a lucky man to have a wife like that. And God, I mean, you have to give, I always give God the highest praise. And so I'm glad that you do too. Joel, any last words before we cut out?
Just for the listeners, please don't be afraid to open up to somebody. There's going to be fear there, but there's so many individuals on this planet that can relate to what you're going through or what you have gone through. And I still get uncomfortable going to AA meetings, and I was the chairman of it. I still have anxiety going to work, and I'm the go-to guy. I still don't know how to be the perfect dad. I still don't know how to be the perfect husband, the perfect son, the perfect neighbor. But what I don't do is I don't run away anymore. I stay. For me personally, I pray about it, and I pick up a phone and I call somebody that I can trust that has time to give me some constructive feedback that I need. And this is a daily thing. It's a daily inventory, and today might be my last. And if I were to go, God, forbid it does, but if today were my last, I'd be at peace because of the change that I have done in my life. And to be here with my wife.
It really is. That's very powerful. And again, I congratulate you. And like you said, I guess the main thing from your standpoint is not to keep this kind of stuff contained. Get it out in the open, talk to somebody that may be going through the same situation, just somebody that can listen and give you feedback rather than keeping it all boiled up until something terrible happens. Well, Joel, I want to thank you again very much for joining me here on Right Mind. I encourage everybody to check out his book. Again, it's called The Book of Joel, Cunning, Baffling and Powerful. And it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble is just about anywhere. Look it up. But again, we'll put that on the screen and it'll be in our descriptions. Joel, thank you again for joining us. And I want to thank my listeners and viewers again for joining us. And this is Todd Showalter. And thank you for watching and listening to Right Mind. And remember, if you don't have a right mind, you don't have a mind at all. Till next time, bye-bye.
This has been the Right Mind Podcast with Todd Showalter.